Okay, hello out there. This is Nancy Hopkins. I'm with Colleen Kelly, who produces through Haggy Shack Radio, and that's at haggyshack.com. And this is this World Talk with Radio. No, World Talk. Oh my God, I've been working on other shows, and anyway. And it is 2017, and it's January 4th. Imagine that. So, Nora, are you there, hon? Hello?
Yeah, are we live?
Yes.
Oh, hey. I just came on the call. Hi, everyone. Hi, Colleen. Hi, Nancy. It's nice to be back again.
Again, yes.
For another week.
It always feels like I just hung up from you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to close the window. Yeah, I was telling you, I can't believe another week has passed. It's to me at least, my perception, it's going too fast. Too fast. Crazy.
Oh, it is. So today we're going to have Aron on, correct?
Yes, but he will be on in about, let's say, between a half hour and an hour. So everybody, you're going to have to, you're going to have to excuse us for that. I apologize in advance, but the thing is, he had to leave work a bit late, so he's practically going to get home and get on the computer immediately. But anyway, I don't think he wants to do more than an hour because, just that I got the feeling that 1 hour for him was going to be enough for the first time because I think he's a little nervous, although I tried to calm him down and tell him that it's a very comfortable environment. It's very informal, but yeah. But I'm excited to have him. He's a really nice guy.
Well, he's gonna be. It's his first radio show, and he's rushing from work through work traffic in order to get home. Exactly. God bless him. Let's just think of him in a lovely, calm, pink bubble that is surrounded by gold, another gold bubble, and a platinum bubble, and an amethyst bubble, and just feeling really good. Yeah. And we'll get him here, and he'll be okay. He'll be amongst friends.
Exactly. I'm sure you're gonna like him. He's a very nice person, and I'm just his idea was really nice. I'll just explain it quickly, even to the listeners.
Take your time and introduce him to us because he'll be here. We want to be ready for him.
Of course. So practically, the way Aron and I met was through Twitter. And I kind of published, my story and the things that I wanted to do, and he came across me, and I think he got very interested in my story and my background, and also having battled with depression. So I think he saw me as a candidate, as one of the candidates for his book. And the book is called A Day in My Head. It's practically a collection of stories from different people, all with different types of psychological or mental disorders. And each one of us was supposed to write just like an entry for the 16th of May, which is the Mental Health Day, and kind of share how we are feeling on that specific day compared to other days, and also elaborate a little bit on the whole background and the story. So I did my part, and I sent it out when he asked for it, and that's it. Then when he was able to get all the stories, he put them into this book, and obviously the whole editing process takes time, and the book was just published about a month ago. A bit less, maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. So he was very excited. I didn't get the book yet, but I'm looking forward to getting it and reading it. And my story is going to be in there, so I'm very happy. Anyway, he contacted me on Twitter and said if I wanted to do that. And I was very happy. I said, of course, I'd love to share. If this is a way to contribute in kind of removing the stigma of mental or psychological disorders, then absolutely, I would love to. And that's practically how, it came about for us to get to know each other.
Well, that whole concept of the psychiatric community and their designating certain traits in human beings as being psychological disorders.
Yeah.
A lot of that is true. There are people out there for, 1,000 different reasons can have problems that can be addressed by the psychiatric community. However, in recent years, it started in 2010 when Laura Hill, singer, I don't really know her except that she was considered a very, very talented young lady.
Lauryn Hill. Oh, yeah.
Lauryn Hill.
Her. She has a beautiful voice.
And she got into a tax jam with the IRS and was before a judge. And apparently she's a conspirator, truther person. And so she went before the judge explaining why, basically, I guess she thought that she didn't need to pay taxes. And how she believed that the whole community of the entertainment sector is really perverse, and that they try to, you have to play their game. It's not because of your talent. And the judge said that she needed to seek psychiatric help.
Wow.
So somebody posted this, and then somebody else posted an interesting addition to the psychiatric journal that stipulated in 2010 some new psychiatric problems. And one of them was called ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. And as I'm reading the explanation of what this is, and it's a childhood disease where, they basically rebel against authority. And I'm going and they got specific things they have, and I go, oh my God, I've got this ODD thing.
Yeah.
So that ended up creating the ODD group on Facebook that then became the ODD collective radio show on Sundays on Wolf Spirit. So JP and I have laughed about this, how that whole thing came about. But then they added one that says that you've got a psychiatric problem if you believe in alternative realities. It's the alternative reality dysfunction.
I guess we've all got it.
We're really in trouble here, you know what I'm saying? But
talking about reptilians and
I know, so I honor this project that Aron did, because in reality, I think that there are problems that, are physical based, in the nervous system, in the chemistry, in your hormones. There's a lot of reasons for a lot of things. But some of these things, I think, are control mechanisms.
I agree. Honestly, this whole mental issue about, psychology is so complex that it's very difficult to just explain it in one word. Because, as you were saying, there are so many facets and reasons why people start to have certain behaviors or certain feelings. For example, let's take depression. There are different reasons why people get depressed. It's not just one reason, they're depressed because, they feel like a failure, or because they've been traumatized. There are there are even, to me at least, in my opinion, there are also esoteric reasons where, unfortunately, the mainstream science does not accept or does not believe in. So, because we have also an emotional body, and I believe a lot of people go through either depression, anxiety, or any type of kind of dark night of the soul situation where it's not really a disorder, but it is an opportunity for the person to reevaluate and evaluate their life, their choices, the things they're going through, and it's an opportunity for them to actually change. And the difference between people who rise above and really succeed on a personal level are the ones who take that opportunity versus those who go through the same thing, have the same opportunity, but actually choose to keep going through that same pattern, which is feeling like a victim, feeling like everything is against them. You see? So if mainstream science can actually look at that and try to understand it, you will understand that not every depressed patient should be treated the same way. I don't know, you get what I'm saying? So this is to me a big gap.
Well, let me tell you, when I was a freshman in college, I had come from a town that was it was like, cookie cutter. Everybody was basically the same white person coming from the same 50s environment, and everybody knew everybody and everybody was the same. And I get to the University of Massachusetts and all of a sudden I'm confronting a place where there are black people. We didn't even have black people in the town, There were Orientals. There were all these other, visually, different people because we didn't even have big cities that you went to, So it was like this amazing culture shock just from the, being introduced to all these different people. But in a university setting, you also begin to talk about different things, your religions, the politics, and those things. I'm finding out that, oh my God, even my religion isn't right. There's all these other religions. I thought if you weren't Christian in some way, there was something wrong. We didn't know about Muslims. We didn't know about, anything. And so one day I went to get up and I couldn't get up. I couldn't make the decision to get out of bed. And I missed my classes. I finally get out of bed, but then I couldn't decide what to put on. And for 3 days, I was in a total mental collapse. Now, had I gone to a psychiatrist at this point, I'd probably be on drugs and really screwed up by now, or dead. But what happened was that I think I at the 3D conscious place that, locks us, it's a blank page when we start, a blank book when we start out in life, and then we fill it with our experiences. And I think that was what had gone wrong. The story wasn't meshing anywhere. It had just fallen apart. So I kind of just remember a lot of blackness, a lot of darkness, and not being able to think or function. And out of that, somehow or another, I had a conversation with myself. And I realized that the only person who would know every single thought, every single feeling, know every single experience it with me was myself. And I decided that I was going to chuck everything I had ever been told by anybody else and only trust myself, that myself would become my own best friend. And it was the most important thing that happened to me in college because it wiped away all of the past and allowed me to build a new reality based on what I felt was true. Because I, at that point, couldn't trust anybody. Not my parents, not my church, not my government. And then, of course, we get into the Vietnam thing, and that just reinforces the lies and deceit that were involved. But I was lucky.
Right.
I was lucky because at that time, nobody talked about this stuff. Nobody ran to doctors. Nobody looked at you and said, I think you're having a nervous breakdown. Nobody would know it because nobody did it.
It was not accepted.
Yeah, so growing up in that particular time frame was uniquely perfect for somebody to come out of an egg and really begin to expand as a human being.
Yeah, that's amazing. You took that opportunity.
Yes.
Because you trusted yourself. It was like an aha moment.
There was no other options, Nora. You didn't talk to your friends about anything like this. Nobody talked about it. Nobody talked about running to a doctor. Cripe, I don't even know if I knew what a psychiatric doctor was. That part of society did not exist. And now it permeates everything. Take this for this reason, mood reason. You need to sleep, take this. It's all like outside of the human being, the human experience. It's being given names, ODD, bipolar, all these names on it. And it's just friggin' crazy.
You see, the way I kind of see it is that there is positive and negative from both sides. Let's say if we go back to that period where people didn't really express, there's a positive and a negative. The positive is that people were more resilient because they had to. But on the negative note, they were not aware, okay? Now, which is not good. If you come to the present, there's a positive and negative. The negative is that people are, as you said, they look on the outside. They try to find treatment on the outside, or even if you really don't have something, you go just take medicine or need treatment for any small little thing. So there's no more resilience as people were before. But the positive thing is that at least now there is more awareness. So if we can take the past and the present, put them together, and try to bring back that resilience that once existed, because even our parents, they were much more resilient than us. I'm talking now about younger people, the younger generations, where they get married, for example, and of course, there are some cases where, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't agree if a woman is being abused by her husband, or if a husband has a wife that is, cheating on him or whatever. Okay, I could understand that maybe it's a problem if these two people stay together if they don't work things out. But the thing is, now people get separated for the dumbest little things, and so if we can just take those two things, the resilience from the past and the awareness, or that people now are really starting to look at situations and not ignore them or put them under the rug as they used to do, I think we would have a much better society, and we would see less of these problems. But this is the thing. Now I see the new generations are not resilient. We're very weak from this perspective. But this is also an opportunity. I see that it is an opportunity. To see this weakness and try to enhance it and learn from it. Try to understand, why am I feeling this way? Why can't I take this? Why can't I be strong? How can I be stronger? How can I do it in a way where it benefits me? And this is where the internal work and taking responsibility of the self comes in. We have to work on ourselves.
And Aron's concept of allowing people to tell their story. See, a lot of it is the fact that you might go to a doctor and tell your story. But people don't openly talk about this stuff. And if you talk about it and you've got somebody to bounce off of, most of the time all you need to do is talk to somebody. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's got an MD after him or her. No. So this concept of Aron giving a format for people to tell their stories, because I guarantee you there's other people out there that are going through the same stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And if you got through it, then they can look and see how you got through it and how the other persons get through it. And, at least they know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel that doesn't require drugs. Or in some cases, maybe it does.
Well, yeah, I still do think that sometimes there may be a need, although I say it, and I'm not 100% comfortable saying it and admitting it, but I do believe that there are some situations where drugs are needed. Because there are some situations where it is really physiological, and it's gotten to a point where the person becomes disabled, and drugs can help. They have to be, there have to be certain specific circumstances where a person should be taking drugs. But the doctor has to have ethics, very strong ethics. The person has to be under very strong supervision, and then when the person does not need, or the patient doesn't need those drugs anymore, that's it. They need to start working on getting out of that, because you can't just stop taking drugs cold turkey. Obviously, there's a process that you have to go through. But those are specific cases. But not everyone who's depressed says, okay, I'm going to go and take, Cipralex or whatever. It's not something that, it shouldn't be taken so lightly.
Well, not only that, but we're talking about pharmaceutical drugs. And that is
that's what I mean.
In and of itself a problem, because that's where they leave it. Now, my friend, Reverend Lee Brown, she was someplace and ran into somebody that's working with oils, essences. And they did a reading on her. I'm not sure if it was muscle testing or what, but they did a reading and said, you need these. And so they, instead of selling all the bottles like they normally do, they made a concoction and gave her a bottle that was specific to her. Now, that's the type of healing that they're not looking at because they make so much money in the pharmaceutical environment. I mean, homeopathy. Now, people go crazy. Oh, homeopathy is just water. It's blah, 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 blah. Good Lord, people. When the whole medical profession started out, every hospital had a mandatory homeopathic doctor on the staff because it had been for 200 years the most efficient way of healing. But when the American Medical Association came together, they threw them out.
Yeah. It's all about the money.
It's all about the money. And so when I look at the medical profession, I see that you've got doctors, and then once in a while you've got a healer. And a healer goes beyond just the, pushing drug thing and really tries to get to the core of what is wrong. Every person is an individual. That you have to deal with it on an individual basis. You have to do that because you're a healer, not because you're some kind of a mechanical drug pushing, let's cut their spleen out or whatever thing. It's barbaric to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because healers work with the soul, and they take it slow. Because the soul also, your emotional body can take so much, so it needs to be taken gradually. You can't just throw everything. It won't accept it. So it's kind of like going under, finishing a layer at a time. Because, especially if you go through a lifetime of shoving things under the rug, you tend to accumulate stuff. So you can't just, we can't just get rid of all of it so quickly. We take it one step at a time. And, that's why I personally believe as well that, healing, like, alternative healing is definitely much better, even on the long run and on a spiritual level as well. Medicine is good, but it only fixes, the surface. And, just like cancer. Yes, exactly. And just like cancer, a person can get cancer and then get cured through mainstream means, but the cancer can come back. So you didn't really fix the problem. The problem is we need to see what caused that cancer. And we know that in most cases, cancer comes from emotional problems like anger, resentment, things like that. Or imbalance in the emotional body that then is transmitted to the physical. Our body never lies. It speaks to us. And you can just see it when, for example, you're trying to show a poker face to a person that is pissing you off, but you can feel it internally that you're getting angry. Or you're afraid. Your heart starts beating, you feel scared, even though on the outside you're not showing it. So this tells you that the body does not lie, even though you try to hide it. That's kind of the example I always use when I talk to people about this.
Interesting. It's a situation that every family incurs somebody who they think is a Looney Tune,
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they're not Looney Tunes at all. They're just odd people, but we have
they're odd.
They're odd in that they're not fitting the status quo, the stereotypical, person. And that comes from an attitude of what I know is the way it's supposed to be, and you don't conform. So therefore, there's something wrong with you. Instead of saying, my goodness, you're odd. What's making you different? Because many, many times, even though you think they're odd, you also have an attraction to them. You know,
Yes.
because they've got something you don't have, which is an energy that is different. And especially in children. I mean, the kids today, my, they're nothing like we were.
Yeah.
And, you know, their DNA is even different, but they don't even have the database to be able to know that it's different because it's changed, not because they've got some disease. You know, they say, oh, there's something wrong with its DNA, you know, well, it must be sick. No, they're not sick, they're going through a transmutation. But again, it's opening up your psyche to the potential of everything that is, including healing without pharmaceutical drugs.
Absolutely.
You know, even if you have to call in a shamanic healer, you know, I mean, we shouldn't limit. We've seen too many times where those were the answers, whereas everything else. I mean, chiropractors are always being put down, and yet I swear by the chiropractor. I do not go to a medical doctor. I do go to a chiropractor. Why? Well, because it's all a balance thing, you know, and if your emotional body is out of balance, it's the body, the entire, you know, multidimensional body is in dis-ease. It's out of balance. It's not in ease. It's not comfortable. That proceeds to create an uncomfortable situation in the 3D body that can lead to all sorts of diseases. Well, in the 3D body, if you're out of alignment, if your back is out, if your neck is out, when you're in that kind of a condition, all right, you're still in a diseased situation, even if your emotional and your physical and your everything is perfect. The 3D physical body is out.
Yes.
So that's why I go to the chiropractor, because it's also, I can think about it or explain it like an electrical system. You've got, in your house, you got electric systems going through wires. If the wire is bent, the pipe is bent, and the wire gets pinched, the electronic or the electrical equipment attached to it could get damaged.
Exactly.
Same with only it's a nervous system. So
it's true. It goes vice versa. I mean, if the body is not functioning well, it doesn't help the energy flow. And if the energy is not balanced, then it won't work well within the body, even if the body is okay. So it goes both ways, I guess, right? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what happens with people, okay, and they talk about the chakras being out. Okay, let's look at the body as an electrical system, an electronic system. You've got various energy fields, all right? You've got first you got your physical, and then the next one that is really a blueprint for the physical is the etheric. Then you have what is considered your emotional body, and then your mental body. Now, all of those things need to be aligned, but all of those things are operating at different frequencies. So in order to be able to bring these various, let's say, subsystems to work together in the entire system of the multidimensional person, the chakra systems were created. And those are like transformers. Transducer, it's called.
Okay.
Transducer. And what happens is that you got 120 coming in, and you need 60 for the other side. So it steps it down to 60. Okay? It makes it less. So in your higher bodies, you're operating at very high frequencies. So what happens is that those chakra systems that are connected to that particular, like your mental body, your emotional body, those, okay, are taking those high level ones and stepping them down so that they can be used eventually by the 3D, the etheric and the 3D. Now it goes the other way. If your 3D body is in desperate need of energies to heal, to stabilize, the reverse happens. the 3D body is saying, please, you got to give me more. And so what happens is that it sends a message back up through these that gets transduced back up into higher frequencies. So it's all like this way of meshing together these frequencies.
Yeah, it's so just like what... Oh, sorry.
Well, that's why if a chakra system is out, if it's not balanced, okay, it means it's getting conflicting information and it's failing. So when you get the chakras, that's why if you work on getting the transducer back up to par, then everything starts to come together again. But that's what the chakra system is all about, in my opinion. Yeah,
I get you. Yeah, just like when David Wilcock spoke about this, which I found very interesting, and he kind of backed it with some scientific research. I don't remember what scientist, to be honest, but this whole thing about where does energy come from? The whole study of the photons and what's within the photons, that there's information, and that it seems like life is created within these photons, if I'm explaining it correctly right now, that practically what it is, that creation is absorbing, if I can use that word, information from the etheric to create. That's how creation manifests. So it's the same thing with, because if you think about it, even if you are already a created human being, you have a body, but there's still energy that's flowing within you from the etheric, from where creation actually comes from. And as you said, if there is a block, then it's like your body is dying. That's how cancer comes. So the problem is that what seems to be the problem is that when the block happens, that energy can't flow, so creation cannot continue. So if we have to think about it in this way, every 7 years, if I'm correct, all cells in the body are regenerated. So practically, after 7 years, you are... Is it 7 years? I think it's 7 years. You are a completely different human being, physically. Okay.
I'm not sure. Not sure if it's 7 or 8.
I might be wrong, or right. Maybe something like that. Less than a decade, but
that's based on how long the bones take to completely regenerate. You actually regenerate your different organs and different parts of your body much faster, many times before you go through those 8 years. You continue.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Exactly, but that's the thing. If we understand that we are regenerating every few years, then logically speaking, this body that you are attached to is not the same body you had 15, 20 years ago. Whether it's internal or external, your skin, your bones, your organs. So what does this mean? It means that you die and you are alive in every second. You get what I'm saying? Die on a metaphorical level, I mean it. That your body is never the same body. What's the same is that essence. And what seems to be the case, that this energy that comes from the etheric is what keeps creating and regenerating these cells. So that's kind of what I understood from, for example, what David Wilcock said. And I think this is mind-blowing, because it really changes your view on how things are. Everything.
Well, what I think you're referencing
you have a comment on that?
I think you're referencing his discussion of the way that photons are seen to be absorbed by the DNA itself. And then
yes,
in the
but
cell.
He was also making the discussion of the cancer itself, that how cancer is formed and how it can be actually removed without external invasion. Or
right.
Anything invasive.
But it's working with the photons, which are the basic particle of light. Okay, of light.
Which carries information.
And it carries information. But it's more than just carrying information. It's carrying energy from the quantum field. Okay?
Which comes from the etheric, if we can understand it that way.
Well, the etheric, yes. Well...
The blueprint, no?
Yes, the blueprint. But the thing of it is that the etheric is an actual blueprint, all right? The quantum field is like a vast resource of infinite power. Mm-hmm. And the photon does work with the etheric. However, what it's doing is it's acting like a portal to the quantum field for the infinite power.
Yeah.
That's why the photon is so unbelievably energetic. That it's actually like the 3D vision of what's on the quantum field. Yeah. So when we are absorbing these photons, and apparently we have a capacity to hold a huge amount of photons. When you emotionally get to a point of focusing everything, your mind and your emotions on something, then the photons begin to leave your DNA cells, the DNA cell structure, and actually follow your focus. And David, this is what I loved about this discussion, was he finally explained to me why you have a home field advantage. Because you got all these people in the stands that are putting out all this photon energy, yeah, and it's directed towards the football team on the field. Mm-hmm. So when we think in terms of just the mechanics of the physical body, if you look at it that way, and the way that it works with these energy bodies, you come to the conclusion, well, it's all energy. Mm-hmm. And, that's exactly what it is. It is all energy. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, well, Wilcox, some of the research that he gets into and finds is just absolutely mind-bending.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like a lot of what he says. He clarifies a lot of things. Not to change the subject, I don't know where Colleen is. I tried texting her, but it seems that Aron is ready. I just need to know if she received his request. Sorry, I had to say this on air, but I'm not getting a message from her.
I sent you a message.
Oh, really? I didn't receive anything. That's weird.
Yep. I asked if I should bring him on.
Oh, I didn't get anything. I guess there's something with the connection. I have nothing right here. Yeah, if you want to. He's there.
Okay. Well, let's see. Come on, let's add this. Can't be added until you accept their request. I did accept it.
He's on, Colleen. He's on.
Okay.
Hi, Aron.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi, Aron. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. How are you? I'm Nora.
I'm very well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. We're very happy to have you.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Not at all. This is Nancy and Colleen. Nancy is my co-host, and Colleen is our producer. Say hello to them.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hi, Aron. Did you get? You ran out of work to get here to be on the radio? Are you? Do you need a cup of coffee or something?
No, I'm fine. I'll be all right. I'll survive.
Well, we're so happy that you're here. So I'm going to turn it over to Nora because, and I'm sure Colleen wants to say hi to you, but so that because she knows you, we don't, and we have been slightly introduced to you by her. We're impressed with this whole concept of your book, so it's we just appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. Colleen, did you want to say something to Aron?
Hi, Aron.
Hiya.
Well, I'll give a quick introduction. So practically, Aron is 30 years old. He lives in Norwich in the United Kingdom. He has had a history of mental illness in the form of OCD and compiled the book A Day in My Head to help enlighten the stigma of mental illnesses. So, great project, Aron. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it and how you decided to go about this project?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I decided to go about it first of all because I'm a very keen writer, and I'd written about my experiences with OCD before, but I realised that there was a limitation on how many people I could actually reach out to. We're all in this sort of ego-casting age where we're trying desperately to be heard, but sometimes so many voices mean that we get muted out. So what I really wanted to do was create something more impactful by enjoining others to be a part of a group project. And so I thought, well, if we all wrote a bit of a book together and we all pushed it and we all promoted it, then actually we'd have a far wider reaching audience. So that's really what I wanted to do. And one of the motivations behind it is to try and enlighten people, try and end the stigma, allow people to understand what it's like to live with mental illness, and just demystify it a little bit, just so that it becomes real to people. So, yeah. That's
brilliant. Well, I have to say that when you first texted me on Twitter, as I was telling Nancy and the listeners that you were interested to kind of have me on in the book, first of all, it was a great honor, and I was very happy to be part of the project. I have to say that it's a very honorable thing, what you decided to do, because I do believe, and I think a lot of people would agree, that there's still a bit of a stigma on mental illness and mental disorder, and a lot of misunderstanding as well. People don't really understand what it is. So what did you notice? What was the difference that you noticed after kind of speaking to different people, reaching out to different people in order to do this book?
Well, I mean, I've learned that most of us that have these sorts of mental health problems have very similar difficulties when it comes to doing so many different things. So you've got your symptoms, and your symptoms are medical symptoms that relate specifically to the conditions. But the issues surrounding the conditions, the social reactions that we get, the difficulty in concentrating, the effect it has on work, the effect it has on sleep, seems to be very similar across the whole board. And considering this project, although it mainly consisted of people from the UK and the United States, but it also spread across the whole globe, it was amazing how universal some of the circumstances were that people found themselves in as a result of having mental illness.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I agree. Nancy, do you have any questions for Aron?
Well, what about your story, Aron? How did you, has this been a problem since you were a child, or was it something you developed as an adult, and how did you kind of work through it?
Well, I definitely had signs of OCD when I was a child, and it probably manifested when I was around about 10 years old, and I'd keep checking the tap, so it was a very linear version of OCD. It was a very typical manifestation. I'd keep checking the taps, I'd keep washing my hands to make sure they were clean, and so I saw a child psychologist when I was 10 years old, and because it was sort of treated fairly quickly after exhibiting some of the signs, I sort of made a full recovery, if you like. But I think the propensity was always there, and it was just lying dormant. So it then kick-started again when I was sort of 18, and I went off to university, and that's when the main symptoms hit me, and it really hit me hard. It tends to be what happens, particularly with people suffering OCD, that they get a sort of small sample of it while they're very young. It goes away, and then it comes back much harder later on. And it's usually triggered by something. It could be a trauma. It could be something as sort of banal as childbirth. In my case, it was moving away to university. Sort of, I know the distances are different in America, but here, living in the UK, moving 300 miles away from home is a long way. So moving away from where I live in Norwich to a city up north in Lancaster was actually quite difficult, and it meant that I didn't get to go home very often. And I think that sort of, that created a pretext, and I think my mind just went overboard, and I started analysing, and eventually I ended up with quite bad OCD.
Now, for people that don't understand what OCD is, I had a friend of mine who basically hid that tendency from me for many years. And somebody said something to me, and I said, no, I don't think so. I've never seen it. And I spent a lot of time with him. But I had to pick him up to go someplace, and so I'm sitting in the car, and I watch him come out of the house, and I watch him go in the house. I watch him come out of the house, I watch him go in the house. And he does this about 4 times when I got out of the car and said, fucking stop it. Just stop it. You know? And he looked at me, and it was like, and I realized that he had been caught in a loop.
Yeah, that's
and he kept locking the door and then checking it to make sure it was locked. Then he'd open the door, and you know, it was like he was in this loop. And when I yelled at him, I could see he acted startled.
Yeah.
You know, and that was but he was so able. Yeah, it was so able to hide this from me so very long, you know. And then I said, you know, what? And then I started talking to him about, what's this about? Oh, I don't know. I just get into this, you know. And so he never went and got it analyzed or, you know, assessed. But the fact that we started talking about it seemed to work it out, because I don't think it was really a deep into him, you know. It was just certain actions he'd fall into this loop.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's like with any condition, including, let's say, if we drew an analogy with alcoholism, there are those at the far end of the scale that can't get by without a drink and will actually risk death just to get the next drink. But then on the other scale, at the other end of the scale, there are those that are teetotal, and somewhere in the middle will be the vast majority of us who may need alcohol occasionally as a crutch to get us through a difficult time, and anywhere in between that and the far excesses. But I think the same is true with OCD. You know, we are programmed to some extent to we're prone to pathological behaviour, and some people who have got a permanent condition are going to suffer more than others who actually, they may have a small bout of it, but they can get over it, or they very quickly go and see about it, and it doesn't become a major issue in their lives. Unfortunately, there are many people that aren't in that situation and do end up sometimes with lifelong mental health conditions that continue to cause them disruption throughout the whole of their lives.
That's right. Do you think that OCD could be a form of feeling of having to have everything under control? Is it an obsessive kind of thing? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And whatever triggered the OCD ends up becoming quite distanced from the rituals that take place. It's an initial anxiety, feeling uncertain about life, and what is it in my life that I can actually control? And it might be washing, it might be checking, it might be making sure that you're a good person, but you become obsessed over one aspect or a couple of aspects of your life that you feel that you can have control over, and you create these rules which start off as a coping mechanism that makes you feel safe, but actually ends up ruining your life if you let it.
Yes. Yeah, it's just like self-abuse, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's the same analogy in the sense that if you feel that you have anger or resentment that you do not want to lash out on other people, you kind of self-abuse. So it's a coping mechanism to let out that frustration without having to let it out on other people. Yeah, it's fascinating because everything that we do seems to have a very deep-rooted subconscious reason. And the good thing about your book, for example, and other books and even studies that are being made worldwide, hopefully are helping to let people understand these things. Because what the problem is, as we were talking about with Nancy before you came on the show with us, we were kind of discussing this whole subject about how society views mental disorders or psychological disorders. We seem, as a society collectively, we seem to not understand that these things, these behaviors stem from a deep place, whether it's from childhood or a trauma, as you mentioned. And if we can try to be more compassionate and understanding, as a society, I think that, for example, if a person is depressed, and I can say that from my own experience, that what has helped me get over a big portion of my depression is support. Yeah. Support of people that I felt understood me, didn't judge me, gave me my time, didn't put pressure on me. These things, because we are social animals at the end of the day, and we do crave some sort of connection with other people.
But do you know what? It's connection and the theme of collective understanding that the book ends on. It was a piece by Sally Brampton. Sally Brampton is a writer, or was a writer, in the United Kingdom, and she wrote a book called Shoot the Damn Dog, which was a memoir basically chronicling her severe depression. And she'd written she'd written something in this book about how all there is basically is connection, and that's being human, and there's nothing more isolating than mental illness. And so the more we can connect with other people, and the more people who perhaps don't have first-hand experience of mental illness, but that are compassionate and open-minded enough to understand, the better it is for all of us.
Very true. Now, I want to ask you another question, because I don't really have much of an idea of how you view things. Do you believe in some sort of spirituality, or, if you do, how do you see that connection with going through mental illness and trying to understand yourself, not necessarily connecting with other people, but using it as an opportunity to evolve and become not a better person, but become a stronger person individually? Yeah. And maybe using some sort of spirituality in the process as well. How do you view that?
Well, I'm quite, as a sort of individual, I'm quite secular in my thinking. I'm not a particularly spiritual person. However, I've got a lot of people around me, including family members, who are, and that actually, quite conversely, say that I am spiritual. So it's something that we debate very frankly and candidly over many family meals. It's quite good to talk about these sorts of things. I think, if I were to become more spiritual, the benefits would be that you really could delineate what goes on in the brain and what's going on in the mind and your soul and the heart and external to that. My auntie, for example, believes that some of the things she does is directly inspirited by spirits. It's directly as a result of spirits channeling their energies through her. So I guess from a mental health perspective, to be spiritual is to say, right, this condition, this is a brain disorder, but I am more than just the sum of my components. I'm more than just the dodgy neurons that have created depression or OCD or anorexia or anything else that it can do if slightly malfunctions. And I think that can provide great strength and great solace. So absolutely, I think that spirituality can be recuperative, and it can be very enlivening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is the funny thing, is that we seem to see people fighting over beliefs and creeds and religions. My religion is better than yours. I know more than you. But at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about understanding who you are. That's real spirituality. It's not about saying, I believe in this specific thing or that specific thing. If that makes you happy and makes you a better person, it makes you stronger, it makes you thrive, then that's great. Then it means that your belief is serving a good purpose for you. Yeah. But I always believe that spirituality of whatever kind, even if you are actually a believer, or you're a Christian or you're a Muslim, if it is working well for you and it's actually giving you good results, that's what matters. So it's not about imposing it on other people. No. And the interesting thing is, as you said, and you said a very interesting point, that even people who believe are secular, because, for example, they say, I'm not following a specific religion, but can actually be much more spiritual than people who claim to be religious, because it's not about putting labels. No. And I think that, and I do believe that mental illnesses or these kind of problems that come from the mind have a lot to do with self-worth, believing in oneself, self-love. And at the end, these are all very spiritual concepts. They're concepts that have been spoken about many, many years ago by many sages. So it all comes back. If we look at it from a deeper point of view, not from a superficial point of view, we actually go back to that concept. And, well, how do you see the mainstream science in regards to that, in regards to how they're dealing with people? How do you see that?
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of science because what I like about science is that it's measurable and it's open to scrutiny, and it's always trying to correct itself. But science has not got all the answers. We are a long, long way away from successfully mapping the brain and understanding every small part of it, which is probably going to be almost as fathomless as exploring the universe and trying to work out why we're here in the first place. So I think we've got a long way to go. However, I am very interested in the sorts of science that introduce philosophy and even spirituality into the equation. There are plenty of treatment methods, for example, that take very seriously the concept of mindfulness. And mindfulness is based in the Buddhist tradition of being present in the now. Eckhart Tolle does quite a lot of being in the now, and a lot of people find that they get a lot of hope and a lot of respite from not thinking about what might happen in the future and not using the past to sort of skew your vision of what's actually happening right in front of you. And I think that's a very useful development, but also philosophy as well. I mean, for me, phenomenology, the idea that, maybe we don't know what exists out there, maybe we don't have all the answers, but what we can do is we can look at what other people are experiencing, and we can try and build a structure around individual experiences, and that to some extent is compassion. So I've been very interested in phenomenology as another way of talking about and gaining knowledge on mental illness.
Wonderful. I mean, that's, to me, the way to go, because you can't be completely scientific, and you can't even be in la la land all the time. There has to be that balance. And I just love what you said, that science does not have all the answers. That is a very humble way of seeing life. Because if we go back in history, we have that example. In history, we've seen things that there was maybe a sort of type of science that worked for them at the time, but then we've made new discoveries that kind of showed that we don't need that type of technology anymore, that we have gone beyond that. And it's just an evolving, and same thing with psychiatry and, the study of the mind. They're learning things every day. I mean, the type of experiments that they're doing on a yearly basis are incredible. And I think there should be more people, even in the scientific community, who should think this way. I think it's extremely vital, because having this very closed, narrow-minded way of seeing science, it actually disables discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think scientists are like any other human being, and they can be susceptible to being dogmatic. And if you're a scientist and you're dogmatic, you're actually counterbalancing the evidence and the evolution of knowledge. You're being as entrenched as some of the Bronze Age philosophies, that actually can be quite harmful in society.
Let me jump in here, because we are at the top of the hour. We'll come back after a short break, Aron. Get yourself...
Stay with us.
Stay with us. We're just taking a probably 4 or 5 minute break. And we will be right back. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you the question of what did you learn from the writing of the book?
Brilliant.
First. So, okay?
All righty, and we are back.
Welcome back to the World Talk with Friends radio show. My name's Nancy Hopkins. Colleen Kelly is our producer and co-host, and we have Nora Willow, who is our co-host, and we have Aron Bennett, who is did I pronounce that right? Bennett, yeah. Aron, who is has written a book, and we're discussing his. What's the name of the book again, Aron? Your mic might be off, or you might be not back yet.
A day in my head.
A Day in My Head, and it's a
very catchy name.
Yes, and it just is really an impressive. Project that he underwent. Just so people know, this is a donation-supported network, and you can go to HaggieShack.com. That's GGIE, HaggieShack.com, and you can donate $30 or more, and you'll get 3 S4 stickers from Colleen from CosmicReality.net, where you can get Shungite in the store. You can also access the archives for a week after any live show for free. You just go to Wolf Spirit, that's wolfspiritradio.com, go to the current archives, and you can download any of them for a week. Then they go into a membership, and you can get to those archives by becoming a member for $5 a month. They ask you every month if you want to pay for it. So at the end of the last hour, I said that I wanted to ask Aron what he learned from writing the book. So, if that's okay with you, Nora?
Oh, absolutely. Shoot, go right ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Aron.
Brilliant. Okay. So, what did I learn from writing? Well, I think the first thing is, like I mentioned earlier, from collating all the information from other people, I learned that we all have a very similar experience outside of the sort of main symptoms, which can vary between people. We all have a very similar situation, and we all face very similar problems, and that includes stigma, but it also encompasses more practical considerations, such as, holding down a job. Can we get to sleep at night? What do you do if you can't sleep? And how does that exacerbate the problems? And is medication something that one should endeavour to partake in, or should medication sort of be the last resort? So all of these problems, all of these circumstances faced pretty much every single person that I spoke to, and that included a piece in the book. So that was the first thing I learned. And the second thing I learned is how much I love writing and how cathartic it is. And I think everybody that does write feels exactly the same.
Yeah, I've written a couple of books, and I always tell people, I don't care if anybody reads them, it's the process of doing it.
Yeah.
And you also, it's a personal, creative evolvement that you go through when you go through writing a book and putting it together and actually getting it published. It's not an easy thing to do, and I honor you for that. But the other aspect of it is that you feed the collective consciousness in a spiritual terminology that I believe in, is that all of our thoughts go into a collective. And the more that we just think and talk, that's why we have these radio programs, to schedule people to get together to talk about anything and everything that needs to be talked about. And that information actually doesn't just dissipate or disappear or go wherever. It actually goes into the collective consciousness. And so, for me, writing is something that everybody should do, even if it's to keep a journal. Just because it develops a relationship with yourself. You begin to analyze your own thinking.
That is very true. That is very true. I mean, there's a writer in the UK who has a very similar name to me. In fact, he's got the same surname, called Aron Bennett. And I don't know if you guys know much about him over there. But he always talks about himself as being almost two people, the writer and the person that lives. And one modulates and helps to understand the other, so that actually he becomes somebody he understands at the end of it a lot more than before he started.
Yeah, as they would call the experiencer and the observer. They're one person, practically, experiencing things from two different perspectives.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it enriches it certainly enriches your life to write. It gives you some feedback. It gives you perspective, if nothing else. And even if we even taking away from the collective consciousness idea, which I do subscribe to, by the way, I do believe that that's a key part of it. But even if we just look at the practical considerations, you gain perspective by putting down some of your thoughts on paper. And often when I've had OCD and I've been completely in a fog, completely swamped by these intrusive and not very nice thoughts, when I write it down, I'm able to sort of see it for what it is. I gain a bit of impartiality, but also a little bit more in-depth understanding. So it's dichotomous, but it's very useful.
Well, it also.
Aron, go ahead, Nancy.
I just wanted to say that when you've done two things, you've actually given the people like Nora the opportunity to experience what you experienced when you put the whole book together, but to experience it on their own level. And when you are forced to write something down, you are forced to take your thoughts and quiet them so that you can talk about them in a coherent way. It's actually a way of gaining control, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. But a healthy way of gaining control, as opposed to a maladaptive way of gaining control, which is what your OCD is, because your OCD and all other sorts of mental illnesses are very introverted, but in a negative way. You don't tap into the collective conscious, you retreat into yourself and you stop seeing the world for how it really is. And writing is the opposite of that. It's a control mechanism. And although often you are the subject of your own stories, I think it enlivens the spirit, if anything else.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's a balance because I think in life a big part of it is to find that balance, and we keep falling off a little bit, then getting back up. And I think when you practice through writing, through mindfulness, meditation, these are all techniques that help. It's like a training ground where you get better at it. And I think we can all say, some of us have more experience than others, but we can also, people who are on that path of trying to understand ourselves, we can see the difference between how we were 10 years ago and how we are now. I can speak for myself. I still have a long way to go. I still have things that I need to work on. And I think there's always something to work on as long as we're alive. But what's rewarding is seeing what you have accomplished on a personal level. And same goes for people who suffer from mental illness. And again, trying to understand where that comes from, because we were talking about this before you came on with us, Aron, with Nancy. We were saying that there are also different reasons why people have these problems, and this is another subject. This is another part of the subject that I'd like to talk to you about. Is how do you see that from your perspective? Do you see that, for example, people who have OCD or develop OCD, people who develop depression, anxiety, do they all seem to have that for the same reasons? Or does everyone have, I'm not talking about specific circumstances where someone is abused and another person maybe went to war. That's a very clear, apparent reason that there are two different circumstances. But I'm talking about why it happens. So some people could have it on a biological level, other people can have it from another perspective. I don't know if my question is clear.
No, it's very clear. I think the apparatus that is the brain is very similar to every type of brain. I think, it's an organ, it's evolved over many centuries, many millennia. So the propensity to suffer with X, Y, or Z is probably quite commonplace. But our experiences, and because we are sentient beings and we've got imaginations and we've all got different lives, those experiences and the way that we process our lives are vastly different. So that by the end of it, no one person is the same. The terrain is very bespoke. So I think that, yes, the propensity can be quite general, the genetics that underpin some of the conditions that we're talking about. But when it comes to the experiential account of these illnesses and the way they affect individual lives, I think they are vastly different, and I think people are triggered for vastly different reasons.
Yeah, but here comes the...
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say, sorry, just this thing, Nancy. There's another question in regards to what you just said. Why do you think that people react to things in different ways? So let's take two people who have gone through a similar experience. And one reacts, they develop some sort of mental problem or psychological problem, and another person actually has the strength or is resilient.
But I think part of that comes down to, like I said, genetic propensity. You can be born anxious, and you can be born with the sort of brain that wouldn't be as tolerant as, say, another brain when uncertainty rears its ugly head. And it's a coping mechanism, and coping mechanisms can be anything from checking to drinking to burying your head in the sand to anger management issues, So I think there's the initial propensity. But in terms of the individual manifestations and the individual triggers, what might upset me and trigger my OCD wouldn't necessarily upset and trigger somebody else's OCD, and that is part of the life experience. And whether we say it's vicarious acquisition through loved ones and seeing how other people live their lives, so when we're a child we sort of look up to our parents and perhaps share some of their concerns and develop values that they've instilled in us, or whether it's because we've got an overactive imagination or whatever the influence, that's where it becomes quite bespoke. That's where it becomes very individual.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah,
Nora,
Nancy, go ahead.
My question to you is, what did you gain from doing the writing?
Well, I got a
No, I'm asking Nora, because you gave these people the opportunity to be able to, tell their story, and I'm wondering, what did Nora get from it?
Oh, well, the biggest thing that I got was, as we were saying before, the opportunity to step back, because the period where I was Aron asked me to write this, I was still in the midst of my dark night of the soul, if we can say. So I wasn't in the best place still. And that helped me kind of step back and say, okay, roll up my sleeves and say, okay, let's see what we can do here. And actually, after I finished writing my piece, it felt good, because I was like, wow, I have depression. I'm going through a really bad time, but I am proud of myself, because it gave me that chance to actually see and realize my achievements, as small as they may be. But I did see the positive from it after writing it and reading it. That's, I think, the biggest thing that I took away from this experience. And obviously the other thing is being able to be part of, even if on a small scale, be part of a project that could help just break the stigma. Because this is something that has always been important to me. I've worked, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you, Nancy, I worked, before leaving Saudi Arabia, I worked in a research center. We were working with a project that was under the World Health Organization, and we were working with Michigan University and Harvard. And practically this project was to evaluate and do interviews in the Saudi community and see, what kind of mental disorders exist in Saudi Arabia. So it was a very, very big project that actually finished a couple of months ago. And I've kind of had this background from before even speaking to Aron. So just being able to write this gave me even a bigger satisfaction in a way. So yeah, that's how I felt.
So you were going into the population and you were asking people different questions or you had the
Practically.
people.
Well, what I was doing, I was a quality control investigator, if we can say. I was working with monitoring and investigating the work of the interviewers. So I learned a lot. I mean, I got a lot of experience from that job. So I would work with the programs and the just checking with, because the interviewers would go in the field. They would actually go knocking on people's doors, and this is something unheard of in Saudi Arabia. And we had this huge interview thing, 500 questions. Obviously, they were not all asked. It was a very sophisticated program where, depending on your answers, you get the appropriate questions. So they wouldn't ask all the 500 questions. They would ask maybe 100 questions. And then it would go back to us. Then we would send it back to Michigan University. And what I would do was to see if the interviewers were actually following protocol. That was my job. And obviously training. I did a lot of training, teaching them how to use the program. And it was I worked there for a year and a bit. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. But unfortunately, I had to leave before that because then I had to leave Saudi Arabia. But what seemed to be, till the period that I was there, that one of the biggest disorders in Saudi Arabia is depression. So just going to throw that out, depression.
Well, now let me ask Aron this. Aron, how many people did you get to actually contribute to the book?
We got 89 in the end. So my aim was 100. But a few people pulled out, and actually we got a full book with 89, and some people wrote more than one entry. So we ended up with roughly 100 entries.
Wow. That's really amazing.
Amazing.
And were they from all over the world?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult trying to source writers from countries that weren't English speaking. That was obviously a challenge. So there is a preponderance of people from all over the United States, Canada, there's people from Australia, and there's quite a few people from the United Kingdom and various countries in Europe. It was harder to reach out to other countries, and if we do a sequel, which I hope we will do, because I don't think that we should ever stop hearing people's stories, and every story is worth listening to. I would love to tap into some of the countries that perhaps don't feature as prominently in this book. I mean, I'm talking about maybe countries in Africa and more countries in Asia and the Middle East as well.
Now, did you, in the research and listening to their stories, did you find that the worldwide, is there a different, let's say, social reaction to mental health based on country or region, or does it? Okay, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think you guys in the United States are a lot more enlightened than most countries, and I think that the United Kingdom is very similar. I mean, if we go back a bit, you guys were the first to sort of make it acceptable for someone to sort of lay on a chaise lounge or a doctor's couch and go through the process of psychoanalysis. I think that in this country we had a very different approach. We had the stiff upper lip. We don't talk about our problems, we'll deal with them ourselves kind of attitude, which has never been helpful, and luckily doesn't really exist so much in this country anymore. We're far more enlightened, and I think that's probably partly down to you guys and how progressive you were. But in other countries, so not the United Kingdom and the United States, there's terrible stigma. Some people were afraid even to write under a pseudonym. Some people who were going to write, there was a girl who came from Iraq who was living in the United Kingdom, but only under sufferance with an uncle. She was only allowed to live with a male relative, and it was an uncle that she didn't like at all. She really wanted to go to university. She wanted a secular lifestyle, and she was writing a blog but under a pseudonym, and when it came to putting an entry in this book, although she was very keen to start with, she did pull out, and it wasn't sort of my place to to put any pressure on her, so she didn't end up, so her story's not heard, and you think, well, actually, her story is probably one of the most interesting and the most important stories to listen to. So it's a shame, and like I say, if we write another book, I'd very much like to go beyond using social media as a means to attract people to the idea. If it means maybe travelling or some other way of finding people who can speak frankly, and give us that insight that we desperately need.
Yeah, this story sounds very familiar to me. I think the Middle East, just like I think other cultures, maybe even in Africa or even in Asia, but the Middle East, because I know it and I understand it very well, I think the biggest variety of psychological problems and pressure exist there, just because of the culture. And the biggest problem is that because we're becoming a global family where you see these girls that are, just to use that as an example, these girls that are locked up, they can't really do much, but they have the internet, so they see how people are living. In the past when the internet wasn't there, you were at home, that's all you knew. So you didn't have that perspective of freedom, of having the choice, knowing your rights, realizing that you actually can choose what you want for yourself. So they lived that life, and that's it. They didn't really, maybe they suffered, but it was still a tolerable suffering, if I can use that word, for lack of a better word. But now it's worse, because they know what's out there.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Has the introduction of choice and the idea that we can see what other people are doing in other parts of the world, making it harder for people who are repressed?
Yes, I do believe that. Because, for example, I have a friend who was born she's a very close friend of mine. She was born in a very closed environment. Her father is very, strict and very religious, and she actually was veiled for a long time. And, she had the veil on her head, and just very close lifestyle. And with time, she started to realize things and she started to see things. She is one of the lucky ones. So her story has a happy ending, because she moved out after years of struggle, years and years of struggle. At the end, her father did accept it. So this is a very beautiful story. And she moved on her own, which I find extremely brave. She's living in Spain. She's living on her own. I mean, imagine being... and she's over 30. Now she's 30 years old, so she's not a child anymore. But being in that environment where you don't get the independence at a normal age, which is after school, because that's what most young people have in the West. You finish high school, you go to university, you automatically get your independence. Then if you choose to stay at home, that's one thing. If you choose to leave, you still have that choice. For her, like many others, she didn't have that choice. So 10 years of her 20s, she wasn't able to mold herself into an independent person. So leaving and moving away at the age of 30 or 29, and I was with her every single day on the phone. I mean, I know her story very well. And I would guide her. I would tell her, by the way, what you're going through is normal. It will pass. It's going to take some time. You're just readjusting and all that. So it's just incredible to see that. For her, as I said, it's a happy ending. But for many others, it's a life of misery.
Yeah, I can appreciate how that could be, how the introduction of choice, and not being able to necessarily find the strength to realise it and break away from your family, the enemy that comes out of trying to change your life. I can't imagine that. And
exactly,
I'm lucky
because there's a lot of fear.
And I'm lucky to live in the United Kingdom, where if I decide that I want to pursue a career in anything that I've got my heart set on, there's no stopping me. Subject to a lack of skills, subject to available jobs. I'm completely free as an individual to do what I want. Sometimes the choice has a negative effect. Sometimes too much choice can create anxiety because you don't know actually what you should or shouldn't do. You need sometimes.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there's a servile part of the brain that wants to be told what to do. Unfortunately, that's the dichotomous nature of being human.
Just a funny example. If you go to this shopping mall and you see too many things, at the end you leave not buying anything because there's just too much choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's a trivial example, but it kind of reflects what you're saying. You see, the thing is that even in my own experience, I mean, I finished school. My story is even more strange because I was raised in a very multiple personality kind of family, because there was the freedom. I'm half Italian, so we used to travel every year for 4 months. We'd go, for the summer vacation. We would be in Italy with my family here in Italy. We had the freedom. My mother raised us to be independent thinkers. She's very philosophical, so she kind of instilled that in me. But then as we grew older, there was this change, and I don't know, I still find it, I mean, it's still a mystery to me. I do understand why some people in my family behave that way, because there's fear of, peer pressure, culture, but why it happened, so there's this multiple personality facet. And then suddenly, as I said, there was this complete change where they became extremely traditional, but not because they believe in that traditional way of life, but it's because of the peer pressure and the fear of society and what society would say. So when I turned 17, I got married because I thought that this way I'd run away from this. And that's kind of what I've been told, that, if you get married, you'll have that freedom. And I was very young and I was very gullible and naive. And you see, this is the problem. You make choices, or you think you make choices, because at 17 or 16, you cannot make clear choices if you were not given that chance to be independent. And here in the West, young people, even when they're teenagers, they are given those small little windows of being independent. You go out with your friends, you go to soccer practice, you still have your own life. So by the time you're 17, 18, you're still immature, you're still young, there's still a lot to learn, but you already have that resilience. You're not afraid of life in the same way. So that's the thing. And of course, that choice that I made, it affected my future. Even though I got divorced, I have 2 kids, and then just everything escalated from there. It was a learning experience. But I don't want us to focus too much on the Middle East right now, because that's not our subject, but I do believe that cultures like the Middle East, because you even have India. India has very similar mentality when it comes to these kind of things. Yeah. Same thing. In the Arab world, even men are oppressed, by the way, believe it or not. They may not be oppressed as women. Women are much more oppressed, but men as well. You have a man who is in love with a girl. That's just an example. His family... Sorry, I got cut off. Hello?
I'm here.
Hello. I'm here.
Yeah, sorry, I got cut off. No, I was just saying that that's... If a guy wants to marry a girl... the family says no, then he is forced to marry a cousin or someone he doesn't know.
That sounds awful.
Nora, did we lose you again? Yeah. Aron, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there, yeah.
Okay. We'll get her back. She'll be back. All right,
sorry, I'm back.
Okay, good,
just
good.
Continue. No, I'm done with what I was saying.
Okay, Aron, you got any comments on what she said?
Yeah, I mean, I know this book wasn't singularly about the Middle East, but I know people from the Middle East as well, and I can only imagine, how hard it is, and there are a couple of people from Asia in the book. There's a woman who was a doctor in Pakistan, and she wanted to be a psychologist, but was told it was laughed at essentially, and so she became just a medical doctor with a keen awareness and a sort of bent for psychological issues. And then there was a guy from India whose family didn't even recognise the term OCD. He happened to have OCD. So it's I guess we're lucky in the UK and the United States that we really can be so open with our plights, to the extent that there's I'm not saying that we should stop, because we need to continue to tell our stories, but there's an overwhelming number of people writing blogs, tweeting about their conditions. But really and truly, I think what the world really needs to see and hear are the plights of those in countries where information is harder to transmit, harder to get out there. People feel repressed. We really need to understand it, and I guess part of the problem is that there are mental health, even in the United Kingdom and the United States, is always secondary to physical health, always secondary to what might be happening politically, and where there are countries in turmoil where people are either physically ill because for whatever reason there might be lots of disease, or there might be inadequate provisions for dealing with physical illness, and then there's political turmoil. Those issues always take precedent, and we almost forget entirely that mental health is still very important, and it's still a massive limiter of living, of being alive.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And in a way, they're all connected, because there are a lot of people that suffer, and they have to also make decisions like voting. And they maybe vote. This is just one thing that I could think of from what you were saying, that if I'm going to vote and I'm not clear with myself, I need to understand politics and what's happening in my community to be able to make the right choices. Yeah. And to stand up for what I believe in. If I'm not happy in my own life and I am not clear and I don't have clarity, how can I make a positive impact if I don't even know that I have a problem? So it's all kind of connected in a way. Yeah,
it definitely is. And obviously those people that do suffer tremendously, either as a result of political, cultural repression, or physical illness, some countries where sanitation is poor or where there's widespread disease, you're obviously going to be depressed as a result of the circumstances in which you find yourself, and obviously, mental illness will do what it will do. Unfortunately, we none of these countries, they don't prioritise mental illness. Which is a shame, because even the World Health Organization points to just how lacking some of these countries are, some of these developing countries are in providing services for those suffering with mental illness. So the two come hand in hand. We just about managed to focus on the physical side, but completely ignore the mental anguish.
Let me ask you something, Aron, because I'm really impressed with the fact that you got 89 people to participate in this. And Nora said earlier before you got here that she had actually got introduced through Twitter with you. Yeah. Can you kind of go through the process of what in the world made you decide to do this with such, right off from the get-go, you wanted 100 different people. I mean, that's a massive undertaking. Can you kind of give us just the basic mundane way that you went about doing this amazing project?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I was on Twitter anyway. I had my own personal account, and I could see how many people were talking about their mental health problems. They were what I like to call ego casting. People were writing. People were very forthcoming with their stories, and there were an abundance of blogs and some of them were incredibly well written, and it sort of frustrated me to know that because there were so many, and because the publishing industry seems to have a monopoly over what does and doesn't become accessible, I decided that if we all pulled our talents together, we could actually speak with one voice and be heard. The solidarity, the fact that there were 100 people in the making of this book. Well, actually, if we all pushed on social media one book, then we could get a much wider audience. And so it was almost a case of sticking two fingers up at the publishing world, which seems to be hell-bent on only telling the stories of those that they think would be commercially viable, mainly celebrities. So that was my motivation. And I thought, well, the best way of doing it is to work together to achieve a result. As you pointed out earlier, collective consciousness, and a lot can be achieved when we all put our minds together, and we have achieved. The book is selling very well. It's ranking very highly in the UK on Amazon.co.uk. It's doing better than some quite big titles, which is really good. It's really nice to see.
Well, congratulations, and let's just get that information out now. It's go ahead, Nora. You know the information. Give it to the people so they can find.
No, actually, I wanted to ask Aron, because I think it's better if you give them the information. Where can they get the book? Is it just Amazon? Do you have a website?
Yeah, there's both. So there's a website, and there's also a .co.uk web address. So, I mean, if you
Could you give it to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, on Amazon, it's amazon.co.uk, but it's also on Sorry, I think I pressed something wrong on my microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, brilliant. So it's available on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk, and the website is www.adayinmyhead, all one word, .co.uk.
Perfect. Did you get that, Colleen? Maybe you can put it on the chat.
www.adayinmyhead.co.uk.
Correct, yeah.
Yep, it's in there.
Brilliant.
Perfect. Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
That's great. Is there any other means of media or just anything else that anyone can check for you? Do you have any videos? Are there any conferences? And that's actually my next question. Have you been doing anything in the media or as I said, conferences?
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, Nora, but we did this for charity. So I didn't want to make personal profit from the book. I didn't think that people would necessarily want to hand over their manuscripts if they thought they were doing it just for personal gain. And that's not why I did it. I wanted to raise awareness. So we decided to nominate 3 UK-based charities, because I happen to have associations with each of them, to be the recipients of any sort of profits made. And that's Rethink, which is a general mental health charity in the UK. Then there's Beat, which is an eating disorder charity, and then OCD Action. And OCD Action, as you can tell from the title, is primarily about OCD, but it also covers a few other related illnesses, trichomania, body dysmorphia. So, I wanted to get a wide spectrum of charities. But really and truly, it's about raising awareness. So the organisations aside, and they each of those organisations have written something about the book to try and promote it. But organisations aside, it's about spreading awareness. I just didn't want to get the money in and keep it.
Aron, that's beautiful. I mean, I'm just so impressed, so happy that there are people like you out there who are really dedicating their time and energy and love to a cause that is really worth the energy. Really, I congratulate you. I honor you. And I'm sure everyone shares this same sentiment. Just thank you. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to have a voice. I hope that my story and the story of everyone else can make a difference to whoever is going to read it, whether they are people who suffer from mental illness or people who have loved ones who suffer from mental illness, that maybe they can understand their loved ones more and help them out. Thank you again for that.
No, thank you for writing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know, Nancy, do you have any other, we're almost close to the end.
Yeah, we're getting there, but I'm really fascinated in the fact that you got so many people out there, because I have also discovered in doing the radio that every single person has a story, but very few people are asked to tell it. And for you to reach out to these people on social media for the most part and to make the offer to them, did you get an immediate like, oh yes, thank you very much for asking me for my story, or did you get hesitation? What was your overall feeling about how people were responding to you as somebody who wanted to do this project?
Well, it was a complete 50-50 split, I'd say. Some people were more reluctant, and some people jumped at the chance. And I don't think it made a difference to the quality. I don't think I can draw any conclusions from how people reacted. Some people feel comfortable talking about their mental health conditions. Partly that's as a result of how their society would view their mental health conditions. Some people are luckier in that respect than others. But everybody that contributed something, wrote something individual, wrote something that really sort of nailed what they were trying to achieve. You know, some of them were really, really good at writing, and you could tell that, and you think to yourself, if only the publishing world was open enough to take manuscripts from clearly very talented people, but that have no presence in the media, and certainly no fame or publicity. And then there were others that wrote far more practically, and it was just very straight and down the line. But they actually, in being so simple, got the message across really, really well. So every single entry sort of made up the overall book, and I was really pleased with it.
Now, do you stay in touch with these people?
Yeah, I do. Some people I've made friends with and speak to almost daily, and they would be people I'd never have met had it not have been for this project. So I'm really, really grateful to have made some interesting new friends.
And for the most part, is I'm assuming the experience was very good for them, but do you have any stories that, was like, that stand out that you'd like to share with us?
Trying to think of somebody whose life was changed more perhaps than other people. There's a girl in the book from Brazil, and she speaks numerous different languages. She's from Santa Catarina, I think that's how you pronounce it, and she suffers bipolar disorder. And she wrote an entry on May the 16th, as everybody else did, because that was the day that we all decided to write about, because here in the UK it was Mental Health Awareness Week. And she was really, really low at the end of that entry, and she'd written about how bad things were for her. And a couple of days later, having written the entry on May the 16th, she made an attempt on her life. She'd slit her wrists in one of her local supermarkets and had to be sent to hospital in an emergency state, and made a slow recovery. And we decided, because we stayed in touch, and she was a nice girl, and she really, really wanted to move to the UK, and still does. So we speak about the UK all the time. I try and give her some advice about how she might apply to come and live and work and study here. But we decided that she'd have a second entry on May the 19th, which was just after her suicide attempt. And the reason we did that was to show that, your mental illness isn't just something that begins and ends on a single day. What she has is something that she's had to deal with all her life. So she wrote another entry, and since that entry, things have got a lot better for her. So whether it's because she wrote this book, I mean, I'm not going to be as arrogant as to say that the writing in this book gave her the confidence she needed, but I think she did feel a sense of solidarity. And one thing that she was very passionate about was singing. And she's now singing on a semi-professional basis in Brazil, and finding that she's got the energy to do that. She's not staying in bed all day. She's not thinking about ending her life constantly. So, yeah, I mean, she's probably the most notable, and I still stay in touch with her, and I hope that she manages to realise her dreams and move to the United Kingdom. That would be great.
Well, you know, something that Nora said early in the program, she said that it was important to her, I'm paraphrasing, it was important to her to not be judged.
Yeah.
The people that she found the most solace with were the people that would not judge her. Is that something you'd like to expound on?
Me or for Nora?
No, you or Nora. But I'm just, because we judge people all the time, and that can be as damaging as ignoring.
Yeah. I mean, I think people were worried about being judged, but people had the opportunity in this book to write under a pseudonym, so I didn't really get a sense that people were worried unduly about the being judged aspect. But in real life and outside of the book, yeah, I think people feel worried about being judged all the time. And even though I speak quite openly about my mental health conditions, I felt more than embarrassed. I felt ashamed about some of the symptoms that I've suffered, and I've seen it very much as a moral failing on my part, and haven't been so willing to divulge, and haven't been so willing for everybody to know my story. And if I can feel that, living in the UK and being fortunate enough to be in a very progressive society, I can only imagine how other people must feel.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been just a delightful experience, even though the subject is difficult, because you obviously are a very special human being, and thank God you had the wherewithal to be able to find your way to doing something that is really, really impressive. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? And Nora also, you know, what's your last message out there?
Well, for me personally, I think it's something I mentioned slightly earlier on in the interview. It's about connection, and I think we're living, regardless of people suffering with mental illness, we're living in a very divisive time. And I think that it's all about species consciousness. It's about trying to find the things that join us together, as opposed to focusing on the things that tear us apart. And so, you know, whether we're talking about in the UK, the Brexit vote, the vote to leave the European Union, or in the United States, the issues surrounding your new president, Trump, I think we need to remind ourselves that we're human beings, and we can unite. We can unite under issues like mental illness, and generate that compassion and connection.
You wouldn't know this, but this radio station was created by a man named Dave Corso. And Dave died 2 years ago in July. And he died, but he didn't go away. He's still alive and vibrant to us, because many of us have had communications with him. But a couple of weeks ago, we ended up having an interview with him. So it's called Interview with a Dead Man. And you can actually get it on YouTube now. It's up there, Interview with a Dead Man, Dave Corso.
Wow.
And what he said, and this is why I'm bringing this up, what he said was that he was very excited about 2017, and that he wanted to call it the year of unity.
Wow.
Okay, where people are finding that commonality, that we are coming together on all sorts of levels. You know, and the fact that you were such a proponent of it, I was like, yeah, Dave, I think you're right. It's the year of unity. Nora, you want to?
Absolutely.
You want to add?
No, I just want to say that I very much share this passion of ending the stigma of mental illness. And I do believe, just like Aron said, that and Dave said, that unity is really the key. Because if we unite, regardless of our differences, regardless of our backgrounds, but at the end we understand that we are all sentient beings and we all feel the same, we have the same desires, we want to be loved, we want to be understood, and we want to give those things to others as well. If we understand that, we're going to live in a much more understanding, compassionate world where there is no individuality in the sense of me versus the world, but it's us. And I think I do have a strong feeling that 2017 is going to be a wild ride on the positive side. And there for sure are going to be some bumps and some challenges, but we have to always remember, and I keep reminding myself every day of this, that challenges can be seen and are opportunities for growth. So if we can think of that and be aware of that all the time, as much as we can, be mindful with the idea of always trying to be united with one another, then we really can have a better world. And I do hope that for 2017. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I honor you, Aron, and all of those people. Nora, the people that went into this project with you, I just wish you all the luck in the world, and anything we can do for you. We will put this up as a YouTube, so you can, share it with others, because I think you're very clear on your message, both of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, and again, you can go to, what's the name of that website? What was the website? Go ahead.
It's www.adayinmyhead.co.uk.
That's co.uk.
Yeah.
Right. Not .com. .co.com.
Yeah.
.uk.
.co.uk. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
And we've been talking to Aron Bennett, and the book is a day. Say it again.
A day in my head.
A day in my head.
So based on what we were talking about just before, it might have been called A Day in Our Head.
Yes.
No, a day in my head.
Oh my God. I'm so honored to know you, Aron. Thank you very much for bringing him to us, Nora.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us, Aron. Really, it was an amazing show, and I hope that the listeners enjoyed it.
And I'm especially impressed that you gave the money away. I mean, that is so impactful, because now you have credibility. You didn't do it. You didn't do it for the money. You did it for the love of humanity, and I'm so grateful that you did. I'm going to say to Colleen, what do you got up next? And thank our audience for participating. And maybe we'll do this again, Aron. I'm hoping that you continue to pursue this. And if you get any ideas that we can help you out here, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Guys, I'm very sorry. Before Colleen starts talking about the next shows, I'm going to have to hang up because I have to make an urgent call. Thank you so much, Nancy. Okay. Aron, thank you so much. Colleen, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Love you all. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Aron, you can hang up too, hon.
Okay. Brilliant.
Thank you. Be safe. Be safe. Thanks. Colleen, what do we got coming up?
Coming up next is Haggy Reads for You. It's an encore of Barbara Threecrow's book, Return of the Sacred Feminine. That will be part 4. And then after that is Fans of Whitley Strieber show. No new shows because, of course, it was Christmas and New Year's. So I've got a couple replays coming up. One's on UFOs, and then a Jeremy Bainey show. So that's what's coming up. And then, of course, JP takes over at 6 o'clock. And for Sean David Morton's Strange Universe. And then this evening at 10 Eastern. I was like, what time? Will be Max Steele's show. Max and Nicole Steele's show. So that's what's coming up.
Okay, then. Sounds like a good ending to a good day. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. And have a good day, Colleen. Be safe. Thank you so much. Great show.
It was.
Triple people. Yeah. Good work. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for visiting. You have been listening to World Talk with Friends, a Haggy Shack radio production simulcast over the Wolf Spirit Media Network.
Welcome